The Code of Hammurabi was promulgated by the Babylonian King Hammurabi in the early 18th century BCE. This dating places the code in the Old Babylonian period, a formative era when city-states were consolidating political and legal authority in Mesopotamia. The stele that preserves the code contains a prologue, 282 laws, and an epilogue. Scholars count those clauses from the surviving inscription and use the prologue and epilogue to understand the code's intended audience and purpose. The laws are written in Akkadian using cuneiform signs in the Old Babylonian dialect. Linguists study the Akkadian vocabulary and grammar in the text to trace legal terminology and administrative usage of the time. The stele is carved from a hard dark stone, usually identified as diorite. Archaeologists note that diorite's durability and difficulty to work made it a prestigious material suitable for a permanent royal inscription. The monument stands roughly 2.25 meters tall in its surviving form. That substantial height and weight suggest it was intended for public display and to communicate authority visually as well as textually. The upper part of the stele bears a bas-relief of Hammurabi receiving authority from the sun god Shamash. Iconographers interpret this scene as a visual claim that the king's laws were sanctioned by divine justice, rather than mere personal decree. The code is composed primarily in a casuistic, if-then legal format. This conditional structure records specific situations and outcomes, functioning as precedent-style guidance for judges and officials. Many of the code's punishments follow the principle of lex talionis, often summarized as an eye for an eye. Historians emphasize that talionic clauses were applied selectively and alongside other penalties such as fines, not uniformly every case. The code differentiates penalties according to the social status of the victim and perpetrator. This social grading reflects a stratified society in which Awilim, free persons, Mushkenim, dependents, and Wardu, slaves, had legally distinct rights. The laws address family matters, including marriage, divorce, paternity, and inheritance. Family clauses show how the state regulated household composition, property transmission, and social obligations within domestic life. The code contains detailed regulations concerning property, land disputes, and real estate transactions. These provisions help stabilize agrarian urban economies by specifying ownership claims, leases, and settlement mechanisms. Commercial law and contractual obligations are a prominent subject in the text. Merchants and craftsmen could consult the code's rules on contract performance, liability, and penalties when resolving business disputes. The code regulates loans, debt obligations, and security arrangements. Clauses about debt illustrate how credit pledge and debt servitude intersected with household finances in the broader economy. Wages, employment relationships, and the responsibilities of hired labor appear repeatedly in the laws. By fixing obligations and payments for workers and artisans, the code sought to reduce disputes over labor and compensation. Several laws impose strict liability on builders whose constructions collapse and cause harm. These rules indicate a public concern for construction standards and assign concrete penalties to encourage quality workmanship. The code includes provisions for irrigation, canals, and water management disputes. Because agriculture depended on controlled water supply, legal rules aim to prevent damage from negligent maintenance or wrongful diversion. Medical practice and fees for physicians are regulated, with penalties for negligent surgery. Healthcare clauses demonstrate the state's interest in professional standards and the economic valuation of medical services. The code addresses the status and treatment of slaves, including rules on sale, escape, and transfer. These laws show that slavery was legally regulated rather than an unstructured condition, with protections and restrictions on both owners and slaves. Theft, robbery, and property crimes are met with severe punishments, ranging from restitution to death. The harsh responses reflect the importance placed on property security and deterrence in urban and rural communities. Laws against false accusation and perjury prescribe penalties to protect judicial integrity. By penalizing untruthful witnesses and malicious complaints, the code sought to preserve confidence in legal proceedings. Consumer protection appears in rules about the sale of goods and workmanship quality. Buyers and clients were legally entitled to remedies when sellers provided defective goods or substandard services. The code's prologue presents Hammurabi as chosen by the gods to establish justice and protect the weak. That opening rhetoric functions as royal propaganda, legitimizing reforms by framing them as divinely mandated benevolence. The epilogue contains curses and warnings aimed at anyone who would alter or remove the text. Such closing formulas are common in monumental inscriptions and serve to discourage tampering and ensure textual continuity. Although often called a single code, many scholars view the text as a compilation reflecting long-standing customs. Comparative study shows overlap with earlier legal traditions, suggesting compilation and standardization rather than wholly novel legislation. The code's legal vocabulary illustrates an advanced bureaucratic and judicial terminology in Old Babylonian Akkadian. Philologists use the lexicon to map out administrative language and to compare legal concepts across Mesopotamian texts. Some provisions echo earlier law collections, such as the laws of Eshnunna and other regional ordinances. These parallels indicate legal transmission between city-states and the reuse of established legal solutions for common problems. The Stele was originally erected in Babylon, but was taken to Susa in Elamite campaigns centuries later. The stele's removal and reuse show how later rulers appropriated prestigious artifacts for their own monuments and archives. The monument was rediscovered at Susa in 1901 by the French archaeologist Jacques de Morgan. That discovery generated immediate international scholarly attention and initiated a new phase of Assyriological research. The Louvre Museum in Paris now houses the Stele, where it remains one of the most visited artifacts of ancient Mesopotamia. Its museum context has shaped how the public encounters and understands ancient Near Eastern legal culture. Early 20th century editions and translations of the text, notably by Jean-Vincent Scheil, made the code widely available to scholars. Those first translations catalyzed comparative legal studies and public interest in ancient law codes. The code's punishments mix corporal penalties, financial compensation, and capital punishment. This combination reveals a pragmatic legal culture that used multiple instruments to achieve restitution, deterrence, and social order. Many clauses are specific and situational rather than formulated as abstract legal principles. The specificity suggests the code functioned as practical guidance for recurring disputes rather than a philosophically systematic legal treatise. Monetary fines and compensations in the code are often specified in silver amounts. These precise economic measures reflect a monetized economy in which metal weights served as standard units for penalty and restitution. The laws establish different legal procedures and responsibilities for judges and officials. Procedural rules directed how evidence was handled, how judgments were enforced, and how local authorities were expected to act. The code has been compared and contrasted with biblical legal texts, but direct influence remains debated among scholars. While there are thematic similarities, historians caution against simple claims of direct borrowing without complex historical evidence. Fragmentary copies and references to similar laws survive on clay tablets and in archival material across Mesopotamia. These textual echoes help reconstruct administrative practice and indicate the broader circulation of legal norms. The code's publication served a political purpose in centralizing Hammurabi's authority over newly integrated territories. Standardizing laws under royal auspices strengthened the king's role as arbiter and promoter of social stability. Professional groups such as architects, physicians, and merchants are explicitly governed by overlapping occupational rules. Targeted regulations showed that the state recognized and regulated specialized economic roles within urban society. Certain laws treat injury or death of a free person more severely than comparable crimes against a slave. Such differential treatment codified social hierarchies into legal remedies and punishments. Adoption is regulated by the code, with procedures for property transfer and naming heirs. Adoption clauses were important because they ensured continuity of household property and legal obligations in the absence of natural heirs. Sexual offenses, including adultery and rape, are addressed with specific penalties and social consequences. These provisions reveal how sexual conduct was policed in relation to family honor, property rights, and social order. The Stelis columnar layout with densely inscribed columns was intended to maximize the amount of text visible on a public monument. This compact inscription strategy balanced the need for comprehensiveness with the constraints of stone carving. The code's wording suggests it served both as law to be consulted and as a declaration of royal ideology. Balancing practical legal clauses with ideological prologue and epilogue made the text a medium of governance and legitimation. Hammurabi's reign is commonly dated to 1792 to 1750 BCE under the middle chronology used by many historians. That chronological placement frames his legal initiatives within the political expansion and statecraft of his kingship. The code shows an interest in preventing social disorder caused by negligence, fraud, or poor workmanship. Regulatory clauses targeting negligence suggest that state law aimed to maintain public infrastructure and trustworthy exchanges. Scholars note that judges likely interpreted and adapted the code to local circumstances rather than applying it mechanically. Historical court records and legal practice indicate a degree of discretion and negotiation in applying statutory provisions. Some inscriptions and administrative records show that Hammurabi's legal reforms were part of broader administrative centralization. Legal standardization complemented measures in taxation, military organization, and provincial administration. The code's punishments and compensations were designed to be publicly known, enhancing deterrence through visibility. Public display of laws and harsh penalties helped the state project control and reduce the likelihood of private vengeance. The text provides important evidence for social, economic, and family structures in early 2nd millennium Mesopotamia. Anthropologists and historians use the laws as a window into household composition, property relations, and social expectations of the period. The code remains a foundational primary source for understanding ancient Near Eastern law and state formation. Ongoing philological, archaeological, and historical research continues to refine our interpretation of its legal content and political role.